History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to this 582nd episode of the History Goes Bump podcast. Ghost Tours for the Theater of the Mind. I am your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this episode, we're going to do a location that was suggested by our listener, Mary Larkin, and this is the Mount. And when I initially put it into Google, it came up as the Mount of Olives, and I was like, oh, not that mount.
That's initially where my head went.
And it's not an actual mountain, it's a house. It was the house that Edith Wharton built. Did you ever see the movie, The Age of Innocence?
I did.
She wrote that. She was a wonderful author, and this is an extraordinary house. She didn't live in it for very long, but apparently it's quite haunted, and she was a writer of ghost stories too. So this is going to be a very interesting episode. Before we get into that, we want to welcome into the Spooktacular crew, Greg.
Thank you so much for joining our Facebook group.
And now, this moment in Oddity.
The moment in Oddity was suggested by Jenny Lynn Rains. Back in 1955, there was a little granny by the name of Emma Gatewood, who one day told her family that she was going for a hike in the woods. Emma was 67 years old and known by all as Grandma Gatewood. She was a mother of 11 children and grandmother of 23 grandchildren. She was a strong woman after growing up doing strenuous manual labor on the family farm as a child, and later marrying Perry Clayton Gatewood, who would set her to work building fences and mixing cement. Unfortunately, he also physically abused her for more than 30 years. The Monday that Emma told her family that she was going out for a hike, little did they know that diminutive Grandma Gatewood was setting out to establish a record. The woods that Grandma was referring to was the Appalachian Trail, and through her grit and determination, she became the first woman to solo hike the entire 2,168-mile trek. She did so with minimal equipment, which consisted of the following: a homemade denim bag with essentials like a blanket, shower curtain, cup, canteen, small pot, spoon, Swiss Army knife, first aid kit, pins, flashlight, rope, raincoat, warm coat, and a change of clothes, as well as her trusty Keds sneakers. The journey took Grandma Gatewood 146 days, and she was not only the first woman to hike the entire trail, but she went on to become the first person to hike the trail 3 times. Her hiking style was somewhat unconventional, as she hiked without a map, tent, or sleeping bag, and she occasionally relied on the kindness of strangers for food and additional shelter, which was more than her shower curtain and minimalist approach could provide. Taking up hiking at an older age is admirable, but accomplishing such a feat as hiking the whole Appalachian Trail not only once, but 3 times at the age of 67 certainly is odd.
Three things in human life are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind. Henry James.
And now this month in history.
In the month of April, on the 4th in 1887, Susanna M. Salter was elected the first female mayor in the U.S. in Argonia, Kansas. In the late 19th century, the women's suffrage movement was gaining strength, bolstering the push for women's rights to vote and have a voice in civic life. That burgeoning push for social change inspired many women to step up to challenge the opposition of societal norms. The movement was supported by organizations like the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and this is how the environment changed and America's first female mayor's story began. In Argonia, Kansas, there was a group of men who believed that there was no place in politics for women. As a spoof, the men decided to add the name of Susanna M. Salter to the ballot for the position of mayor. The men, thinking it was a great joke, believed that the prank would emphasize their point of view. Mrs. Salter was an active, respected, and beloved member of the community. Their intention was to humiliate Mrs. Salter and to discourage all women from striving for equality, especially in the world of politics. When word spread of the men's antics, Susanna's supporters quickly turned the prank into a full-blown campaign. Many rallied for the unexpected nominee, and to the prankster's chagrin, Susanna M. Salter won by a landslide with over 60% of the vote. Not only did Mrs. Salter break a glass ceiling, she proved that women do indeed have a seat at the political table.
Edith Wharton was a woman ahead of her time when she was born into her upper-class New York family. In 1921, she became the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize for Literature and is considered one of America's greatest writers. She inspired countless other authors and gave the world a glimpse into the rich of the Gilded Age. Wharton also wrote ghost stories. She believed in ghosts. The home that she built, that is known as the Mount, is said to be haunted. Join us as we explore this interesting woman's life and the history and hauntings of the Mount.
The Mount is located in Lenox, Massachusetts, in the Highland area of western Massachusetts, known as the Berkshires. The man who named them was the royal governor between 1760 to 1769, Sir Francis Bernard. The name came from an area in England known as Berkshire. Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick from his home that had a view of a Berkshire's mountain that looked a lot like a white whale when covered with snow. Melville described that whale as, quote, a grand hooded phantom like a snow hill in the air, which supports the theory that he was inspired by the mountain. Someone else who found inspiration at the Berkshires was Edith Wharton.
George Frederick Jones was a wealthy man from real estate investing, and the profits of his family-owned bank, the Chemical Bank of New York. That bank was one of the third largest banks in the United States all the way up until 1995.
That is a long-lived bank.
Indeed. Legend claims that this Jones family is the one that inspired the saying, keeping up with the Joneses. George was born in New York in 1821. In 1844, he married Lucretia Stevens Rylander. Lucretia came from a wealthy family and grew up on her grandfather's estate that was called the Mount. Frederick's parents didn't approve of Lucretia, and they told their son that if he continued to court her, they would not give him a sailing boat he wanted.
Oh, no, how awful.
Travesty.
I won't get my sailing boat if I continue to date her.
La-ti-da. Frederick married Lucretia anyway.
Good for him.
Exactly. They would experience times of financial hardship, which was worsened by an addiction Lucretia picked up. While on their honeymoon in Paris, Lucretia saw all of the lovely clothes made and sold there, and she became a clothesaholic, wearing only clothes imported from Paris.
And I can kind of see where she gets this from, because even though she came from a family that had some wealth to it, when she had her debutante ball or her coming out, she actually was like in borrowed slippers and a homemade dress is how she showed up. So I was like, she came from a wealthy family, but it seems like she had to kind of scrimp a little bit in order to get the stuff to appear. So I don't know all the details there. It makes me feel like her family maybe lost some of that money and they were still running in those circles, but didn't have the money to go with it maybe. And that's
Possibly.
what his parents were judging. And so now she goes to Paris and she's got money because obviously George is richer than rich if it's keeping up with the Joneses. And she's like, ooh, I'm only going to have imported clothing from Paris.
The couple would have 3 children, Frederick, Henry, and Edith. Edith was the youngest and born 12 years after Henry in 1862.
So I kind of wonder if she was oops, wasn't really planning that one, because that's a long time to wait to have another child, 12 years. The family lived in a brownstone at 14 West 23rd Street in New York City when Edith was born. That brownstone no longer stands because, I like to go in and Google things because I wanted to see, well, where was the first place that she ever lived? Let's see what this brownstone looks like. And I put the address in there, and then this building popped up that looks like it probably has apartments on the top of it and then businesses in the base. And Starbucks is currently what's at 14 West 23rd Street.
Oh, alrighty.
So I'm like, oh, Edith Wharton's childhood home is now a Starbucks. Friends and family called Edith Pussy Jones, and I have no idea why. Of course, back then, it wouldn't have had the same meaning
Connotation.
that it does now, so I'm sure it was because she liked cats, because she did like dogs, so maybe she liked cats too, I'm not sure.
Probably like a nickname of Kitty or something like that.
Although Edith was born during the Civil War, her family wasn't affected much by the war. After the war, they traveled extensively through Europe, visiting Germany, Italy, Spain, and France. France became a favorite of the family, and many of them would die in France in their elder years, including Edith. Women were encouraged to find themselves a good mate and raise children at this time in America, but that wouldn't suit Edith at all. She pushed back against the female fashion of the time and the etiquette, and she wanted a good education. Her father didn't agree with that, and so she had to turn to books and self-education, which kind of reminds me of Benjamin Franklin that way. And clearly, it works because they both were very intelligent people. Now, these books were restricted to educational-type books, as Lucretia feared that Edith would be hard to marry off if she got the wrong ideas from novels. Don't you go getting any of those smart ideas over there, little lady, so you can read any kind of, a science book or philosophy book or something like that, but none of those novels. So she forbade her to read any novels until she was married. It was said that Edith obeyed her mother on that point. Edith said of her reading, "No children of my own age were as close to me as the great voices that spoke to me from books. Whenever I try to recall my childhood, it is in my father's library that it comes to life." I bet we have a lot of listeners that would agree with that.
I love that.
Yeah. And I was kind of that way too, because I was a loner and not very social. So I would say a lot of my friends were in books too that I read.
From her travels, Edith became fluent in French, Italian, and German. She also came to appreciate art and architecture. Edith developed her writing skills, and she wrote a book of poetry at the age of 16, which the family published privately. At that same time, she was secretly writing a novella. She didn't tell anyone because her mother had squashed an earlier effort she made at writing a novel when she was 11. Edith made her debut into society when she was 17. She didn't care for the parties and dances and all of the rituals of high society. This will be made clear in her novels, in which she skewered these trappings of the Gilded Age. She courted a couple of young men. The first, Henry Layton Stevens, did propose marriage, but it ended shortly thereafter. Just before that, her father died while the family was in Cannes, France. The year was 1882. She courted another young man, but no proposal came from that. The years passed, and Edith attained the age of 23 without a proposal. She was reaching old maid status.
Uh-oh. It's kind of funny when you think that that was an old maid back then, because a lot of women don't get married now until they're, well into their 30s. But maybe that's why they kind of feel their biological clock's ticking, because they waited a little bit longer. You and I, of course, both got married the first time at younger ages like that. So I just crossed over old maid 23-year-old status when I got married.
I was 22.
Yeah. Edith's brothers, Frederick and Henry, had a good friend named Edward Wharton, whom everyone called Teddy. He was born into the privileged life as well, growing up in a wealthy family. He graduated from Harvard and came into his trust fund, which he used to travel. In 1883, he met Edith while they were both in Bar Harbor, Maine. I don't know if the family had traveled there, and so he went over to see his buddies Frederick and Henry and then met Edith. They courted and married in New York in 1885. They purchased an estate in Newport, Rhode Island in 1893. This was described as a summer, quote-unquote, cottage. But it was not a cottage. It was very, very large, and it still is today. And I'm looking up all of her homes since we're going to be talking about the Mount. I wanted to see this one too. And I ran across a listing for it in 2019 that it was up for sale for $11.7 million.
Just a little cottage.
It's just a summer cottage,
just
Kelly.
a little summer cottage. It's got an outdoor kitchen and,
Yeah. It's utterly gorgeous, though. So I encourage you to check it out. It's called Land's End. Although Edith was wealthy, she didn't renovate Land's End into an extravagant place. She cherished simplicity. Edith so enjoyed the decorating of Land's End that she co-authored a tome on design and architecture with Ogden Codman Jr. titled The Decoration of Houses in 1897, and this was her first major book. Her time in Newport inspired the novel The Age of Innocence, which we'll talk about a little bit later. After 10 years, Edith was done with the community of Newport and its stuffiness. So although she came from all of this wealth, and clearly, she does enjoy having the money because she's buying expensive homes and furniture and that kind of stuff, I think she didn't mind money so much as she didn't like the attitudes that came with a lot of it. So that's what she was judging, is that looking down your nose. And of course, this was a time, too, where even Molly Brown was running into this, oh, you're new money, So, oh, are you old money, new money? So there was, they had all of their rules even in that upper echelon. However they were here in Newport, she was done with whatever. She's like, I'm not doing your parties and all that other stuff anymore. Let's go somewhere else. And so the Whartons decided to buy a property in the Berkshires and build their own estate. This would be the Mount. So this is the first time they're actually going to make something that's theirs. And clearly she likes design and everything and decorating. So how exciting for her that she's going to get to, from the ground up, design this place.
The original property was 113 acres, and the Whartons were excited to bring a mixture of culture and traditions from their travels through France, Italy, and Britain to the decor of the house and the landscape. Edith poured herself into the Mount, so when one sees this grand place, they really are seeing Edith Wharton. The Belton House in England inspired some of the design of the main house. That house, too, is reported to be haunted. The spirit is described as being a black-clad spirit that haunts the bedchamber reserved for royal visits. Construction began in 1901 and finished in 1902, and the Whartons hired architect Francis L.V. Hoppin to design the Georgian Revival manor. The exterior features white stucco, and there are dozens of windows framed by dark green shutters. The ground floor has stonework on the outside. The west end of the house is 3 stories, and the garden side is 2 stories. The manor is capped by a balustrade and cupola.
It's a really cool-looking house. I love windows, and so that's really what caught my eye, is all the windows that it has. So there's a lot of light in this house. Ogden Codman Jr. helped Edith with the interior design, which makes sense. They wrote the book together, so might as well design together too. Their main focus was on symmetry, proportion, and functionality. The entrance hall features a statue of Pan. There was a library filled with books, of course. The main staircase is lined with Rococo-style paintings and leads to the gallery, which is Italian, with archways and terracotta tiles and rows of windows to help show off the art the Whartons had collected. The dining room has 2 French doors leading out onto the back veranda, and it's this veranda that's up above, so it's on the 2nd floor, so you just really get a great vantage point of the property that it's on from there. There are dark murals on the walls of the dining room featuring fruit and flowers, because she was like, if you're going to have artwork in the dining room, it should kind of go with what's in there. So there were no overhead lights or square tables in the room because Edith detested both of those things. So it was only round tables here to dine on. And although she was about simplicity, many of the walls have embossed designs on them, and the crown molding is ornate. Several ceilings also have embossed and elaborate designs. The bedrooms were on the 2nd floor. Edith had her own room and did most of her writing in bed in the morning. I love that. She also had an office for writing. There was a sewing room on this floor, as well as a personal maid's room and closets. The main floor had the butler's pantry, brush room for cleaning shoes and outdoor wear, and offices for household management. The ground floor had the kitchen, a scullery, laundry room, and servants' dining room. So this was very much an upstairs, downstairs kind of place, even though there was only 2 of them living there. And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors.
Edith designed the formal gardens herself in an Italian style, so they were laid out like rooms. The walled garden had walks and a rustic fountain with a lion's head spout. Her niece was well-known landscape architect Beatrix Ferrand, and she helped Edith design the entrance drive into the house and the kitchen garden. There were walking trails and natural wooded areas. There were also terraced lawns and a French flower garden with a small pool that featured a dolphin fountain in the center. Sweet ferns and grass-covered steps were part of the Alpine Rock Garden. The landscape underwent an extensive restoration that started in 1999 and took several years. Other buildings on the property included a Georgian Revival gatehouse and stable and Lord and Burnham greenhouse. By the way, a company bought all the plans and materials and such in 2018, and so is still manufacturing the greenhouses.
Yeah, because I was like, what's a Lord and Burnham greenhouse? Because I'd never heard of them, but I'm like, it must be something since they were very specific about it. And when I looked it up, I'm like, oh, it's still in business, kind of like when I looked up the wallpaper that time.
Right.
But then as I was reading, they're like, they'd gone out of business, but then this other company came in and bought all the plans and everything like that. And so they were like, we want to manufacture those greenhouses under the same name, but it's a different kind of company, I guess. Edith wrote of her house, on a slope overlooking the dark waters and densely wooded shore of Laurel Lake, we built a spacious and dignified house, to which we gave the name of my great-grandfather's place, the Mount. So you heard us mention that earlier, and you probably went, wait, the father of Lucretia had a place called the Mount? So now you know where the name comes from. There for 10 years I lived and gardened and wrote contentedly. The Whartons had many servants that had been with them for years, and a few Edith considered to be friends. She wrote, several of our servants have been with us for so long that I know to the full the strength of feeling one has about such irreplaceable friends. I thought that was a cool way to write about people who serve in your house. Most of their work was done in the southern wing. Edith wrote 40 books in 40 years, and her most prolific years came at the Mount. It wasn't a happy time for Edith and Teddy, though. They were ill-matched and spent the early years of their marriage traveling and raising dogs, but now that they're kind of living together at the Mount, not traveling as much, they realized that they had little in common, and unfortunately, Teddy was mentally unstable. I think that's one of the reasons why they moved here. She kind of wanted to get him out of wherever they were at. I don't know if it was to protect him, if she was embarrassed. I'm not sure, but supposedly he had a lot of mental issues going on. So Edith took on a lover named Morton Fullerton. She wrote to him of the Mount, I'm amazed at the success of my efforts. Decidedly, I'm a better landscape gardener than novelist. And this place, every line of which is my own work, far surpasses The House of Mirth. That novel she published in 1905. I was like, wow, the gardens are very beautiful. So, I mean, I could see why she was saying, I'm very proud of this work, but she's also writing these novels that are amazing at the time, and she's going to win a Pulitzer coming up here. And so it's like, wow. You see her going, well, the writing's okay, but my gardening. So you're like, I want to see the gardens.
Definitely.
So The House of Mirth was really one of her finest works. She would also write Ethan Frome here, which was published in 1911, and that supposedly is like one of her best work that she had, even though another one's going to win the Pulitzer. That same year, the Whartons decided to separate and sell the house. I can't imagine how heartbreaking that would be because, you know, we know what it's like to have to go through a divorce, but now you've built your dream home, created these dream gardens, and I don't know if she just was like, I don't want to manage it by myself. They couldn't agree who would get the house, or they just, neither one of them wanted to be there since the marriage was ending. I don't know, but I was like, wow, I can't imagine you're only there for 10 years and then you're going to walk away from it. Their divorce would be finalized in 1913. Although Edith only spent 10 years at the Mount, it is the home she is most known for, and it is her legacy. She moved permanently to France.
Edith didn't leave Paris when World War I broke out. She jumped into the war effort through charities and humanitarian groups. These included setting up tuberculosis sanitariums, refugee hostels, work for the unemployed, and schools for refugee children. She even went to the front lines to document experiences in writing. For all of her work, she was awarded the French Legion of Honor. After the war, she left Paris for a suburban villa in a small village. In 1920, Edith wrote The Age of Innocence, which was first published in serial form in the magazine Pictorial Review. In October of that year, it was published in book form and went on to win the 1921 Pulitzer Prize for fiction. Wharton was the first woman to receive a Pulitzer. The novel is set in the New York of Wharton's childhood and was said to be a kinder and gentler version of her work, The House of Mirth. The novel reflects on the pre-war world that was now lost, and Wharton was sad for that. Many of our listeners may have seen the 1993 film of the same name by Martin Scorsese, and starring Michelle Pfeiffer as Countess Olenska, Daniel Day-Lewis as Archer, and Winona Ryder as May Welland Archer. Winona Ryder was nominated for an Academy Award for her performance.
Did you see that movie?
But of course.
I saw it a long time ago. I need to rewatch it because I'm not very familiar with it.
I was literally thinking the same thing.
I can picture
little
them.
Glimpses.
Yeah, I could picture them like in a coach writing and the costumes and everything. Which
Right.
I think it did win an Academy Award for the costumes.
Costuming. Mm-hmm.
So I remember that stuff, but I'm like, I don't really remember the storyline that well.
We'll have to search it out.
Yeah. Edith only returned to America twice after moving to Paris. She spent her latter years writing, gardening, and raising dogs. She loved dogs. Every time I see a picture of her, when I've Googled her, it's with little dogs sitting on her lap. So she was never without dogs, which good for her because we're the same.
Yeah, exactly.
She received an honorary doctorate from Yale in 1923, and that's one of the reasons that she came back to America that one time, and I'm not sure why she came back the other time. She's remembered as one of America's greatest writers, and the fact that she wrote over 40 books in 40 years is an impressive feat, not matched by many. I can't even imagine. Most people have a hard time getting one book out, but 40 in 40 years? And that's just books. I mean, she was writing other pieces and things and poetry and stuff like that, too. She died on August 11th, 1937, at the age of 75 at Pavillon, Colombes. She is buried in the... You know what? You say French better than me, so I'm going to have you say. She is buried in the...
Cimetière des Gonards.
In Versailles. Thank you, Kelly.
I don't think I did very well, but...
You did better than me. As for the Mount, it became a private residence for a time and then a girls' dormitory for Fox Hollow School, which makes me think of Fox Hollow Farm, which is not good.
I literally almost said Fox Hollow Farm.
Oh, God. It sat vacant for a few years, and then a theater group called Shakespeare and Company moved in. The Edith Wharton Restoration acquired the property and restored it to its original condition and opened it as a museum. They continue to manage the property that sits on just 50 acres of the original plot, so it went from 113 to 50, which means they probably destroyed a lot of, maybe not the gardens. Hopefully it was just the wooded area around it. None of the furnishings belong to the Whartons, as Edith took everything with her when she moved to Europe. The one exception is the library that has 2,500 books that belong to Edith. And what's really cool, all 40 of the books that she wrote are in the library too.
Nice.
And she annotated the books. Like when she went through, she would like highlight things, write little notes. So if you go in there, you can actually open the books and look and see like what are the different things that she wrote in them. Like a lot of us, she had these little stickers made up, or I don't know. I don't know what they would have. I would think they were still stickers back then that like had her name in them, like this book belongs to.
Oh, I love that.
So I was like, oh, that's cool. The books are written in several languages and feature a range of subjects, revealing how varied Edith's interests were. The Terrace Cafe has food offerings, events and weddings can be booked for the property. Group tours and ghost tours are offered, meaning the Mount is haunted. We always love it when these places embrace their ghosties.
Wharton was interested in paranormal activity because she had experienced it herself. Many people who read Wharton may be unaware that she not only wrote ghost stories, but she was very good at crafting them. Edith wrote in the preface to her book Ghosts, which was a compilation of what she felt were her best pieces of supernatural fiction. I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm afraid of them.
I love that. I don't
seems weird.
Yeah, I don't believe in them, but they sure scare me.
She had a fear of ghosts that went back to her childhood. She was sick with typhoid fever when she was 9 and almost died. While her mother wouldn't allow her to read novels, a couple of her friends snuck her some books, and she wrote of one of the books. To an unimaginative child, the tale would no doubt have been harmless, but it was a robber story, and with my intense Celtic sense of the supernatural, tales of robbers and ghosts were perilous reading. Edith wrote that after she recovered from her illness, I came to myself. It was to enter a world haunted by formless horrors. I had been a naturally fearless child. Now I lived in a state of chronic fear. Fear of what? I cannot say. And even at the time, I was never able to formulate this terror. It was like some dark, indefinable menace, forever dogging my steps, lurking and threatening. I was conscious of it wherever I went by day, and at night it made sleep impossible, unless a light and a nursemaid were in the room.
So I totally identify with her because I became afraid of the dark when I was a little kid, and I always had to have a nightlight. And as a matter of fact, that went into my adulthood. So then when I heard like Dolly Parton wouldn't sleep in a room unless she had a TV on and the light on, I was like, oh, I totally identify with you because that's how I used to be. And now I can't even have the nightlight. Like we place tape over it so it wouldn't be so bright because I'm like, I can't even have the light on in here like that. So I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. And it all came when we started ghost hunting.
Indeed.
Isn't that interesting that it's like
Very
my
much
fear
so.
of whatever's in the dark? Now that I go around and play in the dark and try to chase down unknown things in it, I'm not afraid of it anymore.
Yeah, same. And I used to, no matter how hot I was sleeping at night, I'd have to have that sheet like wrapped around me tight.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's like, nah, hot flash, whatever. I'm throwing it off. I don't care. But this was even before I started having like really intense hot flashes.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, although I do like to have a sheet on me. But I'll hang my feet off the end of the bed even now. And I used to never do that.
Same. That didn't keep her from being a fan of the genre as she got older. She would read the works of Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe, M.R. James, and she said of Henry James, The Turn of the Screw, it stands alone among tales of the supernatural. And her childhood fear gave her inspiration for her own ghost stories. Her first ghost story was titled The Fullness of Life, and it was published in 1893. The last story she ever wrote was also a ghost story titled All Souls. Interestingly, she did say during an interview that she couldn't bear to sleep in a room with a book containing a ghost story until she turned almost 30. And, quote, I have frequently had to burn books of this kind because it frightened me to know they were downstairs in the library.
I was like, what? You could kind of give it away. You don't have to burn the book.
No kidding. Now, she just might be a ghost herself.
When the Mount was the Fox Hollow School for girls, the first stories of paranormal activity were reported. This started in 1942. The girls reported hearing unexplained noises and having things disappear. When the theater company moved in, the actors reported similar activity that the female students had reported. They, too, heard weird sounds, and they often saw a figure in period dress. Could that have been Edith? Through the years, guests and staff have reported seeing pale faces gazing out of windows from rooms that are empty. Disembodied footsteps are heard in the hallways. Female visitors have had their hair pulled in Teddy's former study. I don't know if it's Teddy being mean, but supposedly that's a hotbed of paranormal activity is his study. Ghost hunters visited the location twice, once in 2009 and again in 2015, and they captured audio and visual evidence that included disembodied footsteps and voices. One of the spirits thought to be here is said to belong to a chambermaid of Edith's named Catherine Gross. The story about her claims that she became pregnant from a lover who rejected her and she hanged herself from the upstairs landing. People claim to see her hanging from that spot. I've found nothing that would actually back that up, so I'm thinking it's just a legend. There is also the ghost of a male apparition with glowing eyes. This was seen by a contractor doing renovations in an upstairs apartment. I don't know if he actually returned after he saw that. That might scare me away pretty good. A shadow figure has been seen wandering in the woods near the house, and this has been reported for decades. Another ghost seems to belong to Edith's caretaker and chauffeur, Charles Cook. This apparition hangs out in the stables mostly and appears many times as a shimmering ball of light. A whispered, "Good night," is heard often as well. We also have seen some stories that claim Wharton is here, although she clearly didn't die here, so maybe she just visits a home that once meant a lot to her. Another female ghost is sometimes seen appearing with sunken eyes and cheeks, looking out the window of Edith's bathroom. So I don't know if that's supposed to be her or if it's another female apparition. The Mount's Rebecca McDougall explains that, quote, the ghost tours bring the property to life in an altered, shadowy light. We share stories from former residents, staff, and visitors of ghostly encounters and the unexplained, and recent visitors have reported mysterious movements and the feeling of an unseen hand on their shoulder.
Seeing this extraordinary house during the day would be amazing. Going on a flashlight tour of the house at night would be a lot of fun. It seems as though there are many spirits here, perhaps conjured by the lovely ghost tales Edith Wharton spun. Is the Mount haunted?
That is for you to decide. Well, if you have visited this glorious home, let us know. Yeah, she definitely had a good sense of writing and decorating and all that good stuff. Very interesting lady. Something else that's interesting is our website, historygoesbump.com. And if you'd like to give us some feedback, you can do that at historygoesbump@gmail.com or any of our various social media. We did get a comment over under the Babenhausen Barracks from Hammer Time 00.
And time is the herb.
Oh, yes, THYME. Was stationed there from 94 to 97 and heard all the wild stories. One of my favorites supposedly took place in the 80s within the Department of Public Works building. An employee went down to the basement for supplies and saw a creature. He immediately quit and never bothered to come back and post for his paycheck.
Oh, wow.
If I saw something down in a basement that I would describe as a creature, I might not come back for my paycheck either.
Well, you don't have to go down into the basement to get the paycheck.
Yeah, but I mean...
Or do you?
Maybe. I mean, it's the Department of Public Works, so I don't know if the paycheck would have been in there too either. I don't know, but who could blame him? Thanks for sharing. Want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now.
Bye-bye.
This episode is brought to you by our executive producers.
Dispatches from the Grave Digger.
We want to welcome back Graylin Shea. We're going to be putting you right back into your garden crypt. We had it waiting over there for you. And Suzanne Silk, thank you so much for increasing your contribution. We're going to be putting you into a chest tomb.
Thank you so much for supporting the show, you guys. We really can't produce this show without our executive producers.
Be sociable. Drop the chain rattling, neck biting, and shape shifting, and join us on Facebook and Twitter at History Goes Bump. Like the page and follow us.
She inspired.
Are you thinking about little Opal who was crawling all over your arm earlier?
Yeah. Freaking French. Like frickin' frack. Got a PPP?
Gonads, what? Cemetery of gonads? What exactly is buried there? Great, it's only going to tell me how to say cemetery.
Cemetery?
Cimetière.
Tiens.
Cimetière. Cimetière de... How to say
Gonads. Gonads.
No, she's... So I go to look up to see...
It doesn't get any better.
Okay, it's French for cemetery of gonards. I don't know what gonards is in French. I'll look it up in a minute. But anyway, I was laughing because the way I was seeing it was gonads, and I'm thinking the cemetery of gonads. Well, then I go to put it in there so we can figure out how to say it so we don't get a bunch of crap because we don't speak French. And what comes up is gonads.
I mean, there are circumstances where maybe the castration needs like a proper burial.
Literally everything here, they just think I misspelled gonads. No, I want to know how to say gonards in French. Maybe if I put in French behind it.
Les gonades.
Yeah, so now it just gave me gonads and then
Plural.
What that is in French. All right, well, I'm just going to try gonards. Let me see if it'll even tell me what gonards is. Let me put this in for the French translation.
Just do the sound.
Gunnar. Gunnar. It might be somebody's name because it's just giving us the same thing in English.
Probably. That's probably a name.
I guess it's a proper name. I don't know. But anyway, here we go.